What's going on, everybody? LK here, and today a little bit more Persona. I wanted to talk about rollback because basically anytime I post anything about the game, someone mentions it because they announced maybe a little over a week ago that the initial release of this game coming out in March 2020, so in a couple months, will not have rollback, although they are considering adding it. I hope considering means they are just going to add it. So this video is like a quick recap of what rollback is and why people are so upset that it's not in the game, plus some extra stuff. So, I don't have to talk too much about 2020. Everyone was locked down, and for the first time, we really felt the honestly shitty netcode, right? So there's two types of netcode: delay and rollback, generally, that they use in fighting games. And in the old days, so I started a long time ago, I started with Melty Blood at Cadenza version A, the PS2 version, right? So back then, net play, online play, not really respected in fighting games. Offline was, and honestly still is, the gold standard of play. These games are fast. Everything relies on very specific, tight timings. You don't want to think that the game itself, like the connection itself, is the reason why you mess up. So generally people only look down on people who only played online or got a significant amount of practice from online. It was tough back in the day too, because there was a bunch of issues. So of course, a lot of the most popular fighting games that people play in tournaments are all out of Japan. The Japanese devs are, of course, Japan-centric, and they wouldn't really think about things for outside of the Japan region that much, besides, we'll release the game eventually. So I've mentioned a couple of times before, and you guys ask a lot, like, hey, LK, why are some of your games that you have in Japanese? And the reason is, before, once upon a time, the games did not come out at the same time. There were cases where you might have to wait upwards of a year for a console version to come out, where the arcade version, they'd be playing just nonstop and they would get a huge lead on us, and we would just not know what's going on. As time went on, by the time we got to like Exerd or so, the gaps between the arcade version and the console version were not so long, and this was like one of the first things of, oh, they're actually like paying attention to other regions and considering like, hey, there are people who play these games outside of Japan. So this doesn't just apply for releases, but this applies to netcode as well. Delay-based netcode is probably the troll, the ogre you hear about a lot, and this is the classic way that most fighting games do netcode. And this is the idea of, depending on the distance between the two players. By the way, I'm super overgeneralizing, and in the description I have a link to both an article you can read and a video you can watch that will be much more detailed on this subject. The idea is, the further away you are, the more delay you'd have to add because of distance traveled. There are cases actually where delay netcode is good, basically if you're close to your opponent, and in theory, if there's no like fluctuations in the netcode, then delay is actually, not so bad. It could be pretty good. But in a practical sense, rollback is just better. And probably the toughest thing about rollback is that GGPO, this is something that came out in, I want to say 2010, 2011, made by the Canons. They're the ones who are making Project L. So rollback has existed for a long time. It's since 2010, a very long time. They've just chosen not to use it. And it's not like they had to like sell it. It's open source, so like anyone can technically use it on their game. So one point of rage for fighting game players today is this problem has been solved a long time ago, honestly. But despite that, we've kept on playing games with delayed netcode for a while just because they kept releasing games like that. In Exerd days, I basically played the PC version, and you hear that people really like playing PC versions of games because there are options in display settings that you can use to reduce the in-game delay, like how much game the actual game has, so that if you're playing a delay-based game like Exerd, it can make the online experience better. To my knowledge, this applies to basically any fighting game that has these settings, but someone would have to correct me on that. So what rollback does is that the game predicts your inputs, and it's generally correct. So the only time the game rolls back or rewinds is when the game doesn't predict your input. A thing people miss is that there's good rollback and bad rollback. So this, you don't hear this so much when people are asking for rollback. Most people are just like, we want it. But you want to make sure that the rollback is good. When rollback is bad, it's kind of funky. But thankfully, in the, at least for Arxis games recently, between Strive, ACR, and BBCF, so far the implementations of the rollback has been good. Another big point about rollback to consider is that the game has to be made with rollback in mind. Now, we got Strive rollback on release, but in the closed beta test, lovingly called the CBT. I wish you could pick a better name than that, but whatever. In the closed beta test, the game had delay-based netcode, their normal netcode that they use, but it seems like they were planning rollback on release, and then the open beta test that we got to play, both the first one and the second one, both had rollback enabled. This is different from BlazBlue, Central Fiction, and Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R. These games were not made with rollback in mind, so they had to go back and implement it, and apparently it is quite difficult to do this. Which leads me to Persona. So again, circling back to the beginning of the video, this game is not releasing with rollback in its PC version. They said they were considering it, but people aren't happy with that, right? They're like, this is not enough. But they do have to remake the game for rollback. I do believe they can do this, and I'm really hoping that they will add rollback to the game. Again, don't forget, since this game was not made with rollback in mind, this game has released on consoles, the previous version, Ultimax 1.1. This game had delay-based netcode, so they would have to make a significant amount of changes to the game in order to have rollback. But like I said before, we have hope from BBCF and ACR. So on my end, I'm going to keep on coming out with Persona content. This series, Persona 4 Arena, is a series that's really close to me. A lot of stuff happened during Persona 4 Arena and Persona 4 Ultimax that as a fighting game player and a person affected me a lot today. So I want to keep on making content, but I also want to be part of the push for this game to have the netcode that the game needs. I'm lucky that I live in a place where I can choose to go play offline, or I can deal with the game having, you know, delay-based netcode, because there are people close enough to me that I can play. Plus, since it's a PC port, it should be hopefully like other PC ports by Arxis, where you can toggle settings to make the delay netcode better, which would be a small win while we wait for hopefully their final decision on rollback netcode. But I do hope they add it eventually, because honestly, it is truly necessary for today. You can have the choice of playing whatever game you want, whether it has delay-based netcode or rollback netcode. But with rollback netcode, especially good rollback netcode, this is the thing that people have to be specific about. It's not enough for the game to just have rollback netcode, because there are examples of poor rollback netcode implementations. Good rollback implementation will just make it so more people can play the game, and it's really important for the future of fighting games. Don't forget that when they announced Project L and they had the first long look at the game, they had a whole section. It was a 9-minute video, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes, just talking about netcode. Netcode is critical to get more people to play the game. Not everybody who plays the game are super competitive fucking tryhards like me, who's gonna travel by themselves to Atlanta and shit just to play the game with people. Not everyone is like that. Some people are fucking different. I'm different. But some people just want to play with their friends online. Some people have friends who live far away online, and more people get to try the game if the game has good rollback. So that's my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.